Okay, so this video is just going to be a brief overview of the Wiggle UI, just helping you to familiarize yourself with the interface. So go ahead and launch Wiggle from the Tools drop down, and then I'm just going to attach the log. Attach the log above Wiggle for now. So initially some of these options are inactive, and that's because you haven't yet provided the input files. So in a previous video I showed you how to generate a single file format. So let's load that instead of the full raw data. So if we switch to single file format, we can import a CryoDragon NPZ file that we've generated. And let's just subsample to 10,000. So you can see here there's different modes that you can provide Wiggle. Here we're using CryoDragon. You can subsample the latent space, which is often useful for speed. There are different data dimensionality techniques available. Principal component analysis is pretty fast, but it gives fairly ordinary embeddings. If I just run that now, there's also several different modes which you can operate Wiggle under, so that the interactive mode allows you to interact with the space and click through the space. So there we have the CryoDragon landscape. You can adjust the isosurface threshold. Here I'm just going to downsample these volumes just quickly for the sake of speediness. So if you select on one of these points, CryoDragon will render the volume in the background. Here at the moment the isosurface threshold that I chose was not appropriate, so we're just going to drop that down. So 0.2 looks like a more appropriate isosurface threshold. In the continuous update mode, I can just click around and select on these points, and CryoDragon will render those as I go. It takes about 1 or 2 seconds. On this GPU I have is a 1080 Ti, so it's a little bit old now. It's a bit faster on my work computer. It should be noted that in the background CryoDragon is performing a full pass through the entire neural network every time you select on one of these points. So that's just a brief overview of the interactive mode. You can play with this latent space. You can scale it with the right click button. You can also export images of this latent space if you want to include those in your publication, say an image file. There are several other modes available. Clustering, which allows you to break this space up into different groups. Graph traversal, allowing you to sample through principal components or latent coordinates, or manual trajectories if you're interested. There is an experimental automatic trajectory mode, which will try and map through this space according to where particles are most densely clustered, which would correspond to most probable or highly probable and highly frequently observed states, and the idea is that these correspond to low energy states. And then in CryoSpark mode you can also export these particles, but here for CryoDragon this is currently disabled. So in interactive mode you can also adjust this space to make it more appealing to your eye. You can turn these on and off. So the idea is that Wiggle provides you with an interactive ability to scan through this latent space and see how these points in this latent space correspond to conformational states in real space. So hopefully what this provides is an accessible tool to allow you to more intuitively engage with your data, given that this two-dimensional space here is a representation, in this case, of, I think it's an 8-dimensional space. Oh no, it's a 10-dimensional space. So, us feeble beings are not able to visualize these kinds of space. So unfortunately we have to embed them into a lower dimensional space. So that's just a quick overview of the wiggle interface.